So getting into volume 5 of Jobless Reincarnation, this volume is very heavily focused on one thing, and that is the reunion between Paul and Rudy. There are many other different strings pulling it along as well. There's some stuff that's kind of been built up in the back end, particularly the interlude Eris one, which is the chapter basically called Eris the Goblin Slayer. That's a really fun chapter. I don't know if that's going to make it into the anime. We'll see what happens as we're recording this video. I really loved some of the stuff that was in this chapter, particularly also the final chapter, which is extra chapter number 2, which is again the death of the particular princess. I'm really starting to get interested in some of these new characters being introduced and the roles that they are going to play later on. They've been hinted in previous volumes, and that's what I really like about Jobless Reincarnation, is that even though right now the story is heavily focused on Rudy, they are hinting at a lot of other new characters that are going to be introduced. Of course, we also get Norn and her beautiful return, of course, as she's grown up a little bit, and of course the confrontation between her and Rudy, because of course she doesn't like Rudy because Rudy took a pretty heavy swing at Paul. There's so much to talk about when it comes to volume 5. I absolutely fell in love with volume 5, even though there is no action in this whatsoever. It is just pure emotions and family sort of drama, in the sense of Paul and Rudy coming together and venting their frustration. And I can definitely understand where Rudy's coming from and his frustration, even though his biggest fault was that he really drummed it up, like how epic and triumphant his journey was, but it was also really dangerous. And again, we as the reader and the viewer, we know what he had to go through, so we can sympathize with him in what he had to overcome, though definitely made some stumbles along the way, but he did what he did. I can understand though how Paul feels and how frustrated he is. At the same time, I definitely do think that he was more on the wrong side. I can understand how he feels, and that's one of the things that I really love about volume 5, is that if you ignore the fact that you can see both perspectives and you just try to pretend to be on one side and only know about their perspective of things, you could completely understand how and why they responded in the way they did. Particularly, of course, with Paul, you look at the fact that, yeah, he got teleported as well. He had Norm with him. He had to take care of Norm. So, of course, even though you could throw the whole situation, and even Paul throws this at himself, he could have gone to the Demon Continent to go look for Zenith. It would have been impossible for him to really take Norm with him, because Norm would have been then thrown in danger. So that's just completely out of the question. So unless he left Norm behind, which, why would you want to leave your only child that you know is alive out, you know, on its own? Even if you maybe found someone you trusted, it would be extremely difficult for Paul to want to let go of that. So of course Paul is trying to work within the rule sets of, you know, staying close to Norm and not putting her in danger. So he's done the best he can with the situation at hand, but you can also feel that as time went on, he's slowly seeping into despair because he feels like everyone else is gone. Rudy's gone, Zenith is gone, Lilith's gone. Like, to him, he's just resided himself that everyone's gone because he just hasn't seen or heard from anyone. And that would be something that would really weigh down on him and put him in a downward spiral. Norm can understand where he's coming from and how he feels because of course she's been there with him, but Rudy hasn't. So Rudy does, you know, give a bit of a harsh treatment to Paul. At the same time, Paul doesn't really understand where Rudy's been, and that's the thing, you know, Paul's kind of thought, oh, well, you know, the Demon Continent can't be that bad, it's probably over-exaggerated, you know, adventurers that come back from there and try to drum it up for being extra dangerous because they want the glory of sounding like they're triumphant adventurers or heroes. But even his own friend, when they're talking in the pub, basically he says, no, it's as bad as what it is. There are beasts and monsters out there that Rudy would have been toast no matter what. But of course Rudy had a particular friend with him, Mr. Baldy himself, that assisted. And then of course Paul is thinking, hey, you know, well, he had that guy with him and he's super powerful, but at the same time, how do you know if that guy is just going to snap tomorrow and go after Eris and, of course, Rudy? There's definitely a lot of back and forth between Paul and Rudy, and you can understand their frustration at each other. And that's the thing that I really love about this volume, is you can understand how they feel if you try to put yourself in their shoes. But at the same time, from an outside perspective, doing the whole ivory tower, looking down on the whole story, you can see possibly where they've made mistakes in their judgments on each other. But that's the amazing thing, is that again, they're flawed, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're fatigued mentally and physically, and they're just trying to do what they can with the tough situation at hand. And so seeing them come together, having that confrontation, that family squabble, and then putting their annoyances aside, their differences, etc., and coming together and trying to reconcile and, you know, build an understanding from both perspectives is something that I really loved. But of course, Norm is young, you know, she's a child, she's, you know, not matured, and so you can see why she's frustrated at her brother, because, well, why would you take a swing at daddy when daddy's been going through some difficult situations? And the other thing to also note is that Rudy has matured quite a lot since being put in the Demon Continent. One of the things that I do want to talk about a little bit in a separate video is the maturity for Rudy. You know, before the whole situation, he had a very different mindset. I felt like he kind of became more immature since his reincarnation, because he was put in the role of being a young child, and because, you know, when people treat you like a kid, you're generally more likely to act like a kid. And so being put in a situation where he's had to quickly adapt, being a leader for not just Eris but also for his baldy little friend, that has meant that he's had to rise up to all new challenges and had to put on sort of the big boy pants and assist in getting through the Demon Continent, because of course Eris can't speak the language, so he's got to kind of try and bridge it, even though Eris has kind of learnt little things here and there. It's a difficult situation, so Rudy has definitely matured quite a lot, while Norm has still kind of got the luxury of being young and immature and, you know, sometimes say and do silly things, being a kid that they are. Paul has sheltered them as best as possible, because I think Paul just doesn't want them to go through what others are going through. You can understand why people are in the mindset that they are in, and I look forward to seeing their reunion and how they respond to each other, because I know Rudy's kind of sat there and thought, well, you know, just let's let her mature, grow up a little bit, and she might, you know, put that all aside. There's also the Goblin Slayer interlude part, which I thought was really funny. It kind of feels like it doesn't really play a purpose other than just being like a little fun little side story of Eris going out killing goblins, but then it ends up being about a particular another sort of young and upcoming mage that has a bit of a crush on Eris, and then basically he finds out that Eris basically is in love with her master, being Rudy the teacher. Well, I wouldn't really call him a master, but more of a teacher, but master-teacher kind of relationship that they have. And then of course another character that's been introduced that basically is part of a sort of a group that does not like demons and all those kind of things, and then that person gets introduced at the end of the volume's main story, not including the extra chapters, which is basically the particular individual that basically says, hey, I am actually related to you, Rudy, because Rudy mistakes this particular knight as Zenith and goes, oh, mother, and then realizes, oh, actually, no, you're not. And then that's when she goes, you know, who are you, blah, 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 blah. And that is where she realizes, well, actually, in fact, they are related by blood, because of course Zenith is her sister. So basically Rudy has met a family member, which again explains why Rudy mistaked her for his mother, because sisters kind of can look alike depending on the individual. It's understandable. But of course they have that sort of family reunion, and that allows Rudy to get some assistance in getting closer to taking Eris finally home. I think this volume is absolutely amazing. There's still so much to really discuss, and I will be doing a separate video on a couple of things, particularly the extra chapter, the second one, and then of course I want to talk more about the family reunion once the anime actually airs that particular group of episodes. So again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What did you think of volume 5? Because I think seeing the whole story play out, and even though it is heavily focused on sort of family-based quarrels, the volume itself is just absolutely amazing in how it plays out each event and the emotions from all the different perspectives. So again, love to know your thoughts, but if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I will see you beautiful nerds in the next video.